I think we should all stop pretending Zurich is going somewhere. Those were the exact words. 12 people at the table, a restaurant we'd been going to since our second anniversary. Candles, a breadbasket nobody had touched yet, and Serena stood up, clinked her glass like she was about to say something beautiful, and said those words into the silence of a room full of people who loved both of us. My name is Zurich Gashawn, and that dinner table was the last place I sat as the man she knew. I need you to understand the full weight of what happened in that restaurant, because nothing that comes later, not the invitation, not the motorcade, not the wedding itself, makes sense without it. We'd been together 4 years. I was 27. I'd just come off the back of a failed startup, a logistics software company I'd built from scratch over 2 years that collapsed in 8 months when our lead investor pulled out without warning. I wasn't broke, but I was wounded. Professionally, publicly, in the specific way that failure in front of people who were rooting for you creates a wound that doesn't close quickly. Serena had been patient through the build. She'd been less patient through the collapse. I noticed, but didn't name it. The way she stopped asking about my next steps, the way she started arriving late to things we'd planned together, the way Dorian Ashford's name began appearing in her conversations with a frequency that I filed away and told myself meant nothing. I was wrong about what it meant. I was right about everything else. So when she stood up at that table and clinked her glass, I think part of me already knew. The body knows before the mind is ready. My hands were flat on the tablecloth. I remember that detail specifically. I pressed them flat like I was bracing for turbulence. I think we should all stop pretending Zurich is going somewhere. She set the napkin down. She picked up her purse, and she walked out with Dorian Ashford, who had been waiting outside in a silver Porsche that she had clearly told him to have running. Within 20 minutes, her Instagram story was up. No caption. Just the city lights blurring past his dashboard and one word typed in white across the image. Upgraded. My phone lit up with notifications. My little sister texted first. I'm so sorry. My mother called and didn't say anything. Just breathed on the line, which is somehow worse than words. My best friend Terrell drove to the restaurant, found me still at the table, and asked what I needed. I told him, time. Just time. I drove to an empty parking structure downtown, turned off the engine, sat in the dark for 3 hours, no calls, no crying, just thinking, the way you think when the version of your life you believed in has just been publicly retired without your consent. That night, I stopped being the man Serena dismissed. I just didn't know yet what I was becoming. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories. That night, I went home and pulled a shoebox from the back of my closet. Inside was a brown envelope I'd carried for 8 years without opening. My grandfather Elias had left it tucked inside a leather Bible at his funeral, with 6 words written on the front in his handwriting. Open this only when you have nothing left. I'd held it during job losses, bad investments, dark periods. Something always stopped me. Not tonight. Tonight, I had nothing left. Inside was a handwritten note, a name, a phone number, and a single sentence. The Gashawn name was never meant to beg. Call Aldrich Voss. Tell him Elias sent you. Taped below it with yellowing Scotch tape was a cashier's check for $50,000, dated 12 years earlier, signed by my grandfather, made out to me. I stared at it for a long time, then I picked up my phone and dialed. Aldrich answered on the second ring. He asked me one question. What do you have? I said, $50,000, no reputation to protect, and nothing to lose. He was silent for 4 seconds. Then, flight to Geneva. Tuesday, I'll send the details. That was the beginning. Aldrich Voss had built a $6 billion portfolio before disappearing from public life entirely. He and my grandfather had been partners in their 30s. He had never forgotten. For 3 years, he taught me everything. Infrastructure gaps, holding structures, compounding, patience. I lived on almost nothing. I worked 19-hour days. I moved between Singapore, Dubai, and New York without announcing myself. By year 3, Gashawn Industries had a verified net worth of $2.4 billion. I told no one back home, not Terrell, not even my mother, not the full picture. The Gashawn name was never meant to beg. I was done begging. I was building. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning at my mother's house. She called me while I was in Dubai, her voice already shaking before she got through the first line. She read me the whole thing, the cream paper, the gold foiling, the two names printed in elegant type. Then she got to the margin, blue ink, small letters, unmistakable handwriting. Come see what you lost, Zurich. S. My mother's voice cracked on the word lost. She told me not to go. She said I'd built too much. She said Serena wasn't worth a single dollar of what I'd spent 3 years earning. I listened to all of it. Then I said, I'm not going to give her satisfaction, Ma. I'm going to give her a memory. I booked a flight home the next morning. I called my head of security, a former intelligence operative named Sable, and described one specific name she needed to prepare for. Reuben Glaive, Serena's uncle, the man who had shoved me against a wall at a family gathering 2 weeks after my startup collapsed and told me to stop coming around. I'd never told Serena that happened. I'd filed it where I filed everything that hurt me, behind my eyes where it became fuel. Sable said, 4 on the ground, 2 at the vehicle perimeter, 1 with you at all times. I called my tailor next, then I made one final call, a call my mother wouldn't find out about until the day of the wedding itself. The invitation was never a mistake. Serena had written that margin note herself. She wanted me to sit in the back and watch everything she'd chosen over me. She was going to get exactly what she asked for, just not what she expected. Word spread through our old social circle the way word always spreads. Fast, distorted, and charged with everyone's personal investment in the outcome. People who'd watched Serena post upgraded while I sat alone at that dinner table were unanimous. Don't go. It's a trap. She wants content. She wants to see you broken in a room full of witnesses. Terrell was the one who surprised me. He'd always been steady, reliable, the kind of man who said exactly what he meant. But 3 weeks before the wedding, he texted Serena directly. Not out of loyalty to her, he told me later, but because he thought a warning might make her scale back whatever she was planning. Serena's response was a 12-second voice memo. He played it for me later, after everything. On it, she was laughing, someone laughing with her in the background, and then her voice clearly, oh my God, he's actually coming? Perfect. Tell him to sit near the back so he doesn't block anyone's view. Terrell had stared at his phone after that, hadn't responded. Then he'd called me that evening and said one thing. Whatever you're planning, make it count. I was already on the phone with my tailor when he called. I put him on hold, confirmed the measurements, came back and said, I always do. What I didn't tell Terrell was what was already in motion. The motorcade, the filing I'd had my legal team prepare, the document sitting on a tablet inside the lead vehicle. Everything was already set. I wasn't arriving at a wedding. I was arriving at a conclusion. The venue was everything Serena had always wanted a room to be. Restored estate, manicured grounds, valets in white gloves, a floral installation at the entrance that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I'd done my research. I knew what the day was designed to look like. I knew exactly where she'd seated me. Corner table, far left, deliberately obscured from the main aisle. She'd placed me there so I could see the whole thing and do nothing about it. At 2:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the ceremony, my convoy turned onto the entrance road. 3 matte black SUVs, synchronized spacing, tinted glass, no rush. The lead valet saw us coming and froze. He radioed the venue manager. The manager stepped outside, looked at the convoy, and sent someone to get security. The lead SUV stopped. Doors opened simultaneously. Sable and 3 others stepped out. Charcoal suits, earpieces, eyes moving across the perimeter with practiced calm. Then my door opened. I stepped onto the pavement, adjusted my cuff. Once. Looked up at the entrance without urgency. 2 venue security men came through the doors, saw the detail, looked at each other, and walked back inside without a word. The coordinator who'd fetched them looked confused. One of the security men said, not looking at her, "We're not touching that." I walked to the entrance. The valets parted without being asked. A college-aged valet pulled out his phone the moment I passed, typed something into Google, looked up at the door, then back at his screen. He typed one word into a group chat. Guys, I didn't see it. I was already inside. The ceremony was everything a ceremony is supposed to be. Sunlight through arched windows, string quartet, flowers on every pew end. I slipped into an aisle seat 6 rows from the back and sat down without making a sound. I watched Serena come down the aisle on Ruben's arm. She was radiant. She had always known how to inhabit a moment. It was one of the things I'd loved about her once. She moved toward the altar like a woman who had rehearsed this version of her life and was finally living it. Dorian stood at the front, looking like someone who photographed well. The officiant's voice was smooth. Serena began her vows. "Dorian, I choose you." And then she stopped. Not because of me. She stopped because the room stopped. A shift in temperature. The kind of shift that happens when a door opens at the wrong moment and everyone feels it before they look. The string quartet lost tempo for 2 bars. The officiant glanced back, saw my security positioned at the perimeter, and lost his place entirely. Serena didn't turn around. She was too composed for that. But her grip on her bouquet changed. I could see it from 6 rows back. The slight tightening, the imperceptible tremor. She finished walking. She reached the altar. She turned to Dorian. And then, just barely, her head turned enough to find me with her peripheral vision. Charcoal suit. Corner aisle seat, sitting like I'd attended 1,000 rooms like this and found them all somewhat beneath my attention. She faced forward. The smile returned, trained, brilliant, perfect. But her bridesmaid Petra, standing in the line, was watching Serena's hands, and the bouquet was shaking. The reception was champagne and controlled chaos, guests loosening, music starting, photographers orbiting anyone who looked important. I took the corner table Serena had assigned me and stayed there. I spoke to no one. I watched. Serena worked the room the way she always had, efficiently, magnetically, like a woman running a performance she'd rehearsed 100 times. Then Petra appeared at her elbow, one hand on Serena's arm, 3 words directly into her ear. I was across the room and couldn't hear them, but I watched Serena's face, and I didn't need to. The smile didn't vanish. That would have been too readable. What happened was subtler. The animation drained out of it. Her eyes stopped moving. For 2 full seconds, the woman who had engineered this entire day looked like someone who had just been told the building was on fire, and she was the only one who could smell smoke. Her eyes found me across the room. I raised my glass, once slightly, the way you nod at someone in a board meeting. Politely. Nothing more. She turned back to Petra, said something very quietly. Petra answered. Serena picked up her champagne glass and drank the entire thing in one movement. In the corner of the room, Dorian's best man Oliver had been on his phone for 20 minutes. His face had gone very still, the stillness of someone whose search results have returned something worse than expected. He stood up, walked to a man near the exit who hadn't been on the guest list. They spoke in low tones. The man pulled out his own phone. He appeared to be calling a law firm. Dorian crossed the room 40 minutes into the reception. He buttoned his jacket as he walked, the move of a man who has handled confrontation in expensive rooms before and believes presentation is half the battle. He arrived at my table. Didn't sit. Leaned forward with both hands on the back of an empty chair, close enough to crowd the space. "I know what you're doing," he said, voice low. "You came here to make a statement." I looked up from my water glass without urgency. Let a moment pass. "Enlighten me," I said. I smiled once, with my eyes more than my mouth. He blinked. He'd expected deflection or nerves or performative calm. He hadn't expected that. "She's my wife," he said. "Congratulations," I replied with complete sincerity. "You should leave. I was invited." He straightened, looked at my security, recalculated something behind his eyes, leaned back down lower. "Whatever game you're running, it won't work here." I tilted my head slightly. "Dorian," I said. First time using his name. I haven't said 10 words to anyone in this room. I haven't approached your wife. I haven't made a speech. I sat at the table your wife assigned me. The game, if there is one, was designed by someone else. I'm just attending." He stared at me, looking for the angle, looking for what I wanted. He couldn't find it. That inability, the not knowing, unraveled him more than any threat could. He walked away. Oliver intercepted him near the dance floor and showed him his phone screen. Dorian looked at it. His face froze the same way Serena's had. He looked back at me. Oliver said, "Just loud enough. He's not a guest. He's a problem." Oliver had graduated from a finance program and spent 6 years in private equity. He knew how to read a room structurally, not emotionally. He'd been suspicious of my security detail from the moment the convoy arrived, and his research over the last hour had told him everything he needed. He sat in the hallway outside the reception, marble floors, cater waiters moving past him, and read 3 separate articles: a financial publication profile, a Forbes verification entry, a logistics trade journal mention, Gashawn Industries, private, $2.4 billion in verified assets, CEO, Zurich Gashawn. He read it twice, put the phone in his jacket pocket, sat very still for 30 seconds. He thought about what Dorian had told him over drinks 8 months ago, a transitional period financially. He thought about the acquisition attempt on my subsidiary that had been quietly rejected. He thought about the prenuptial structure designed to attach Serena's family's commercial properties as collateral. He understood. Not everything, but enough. He went back into the reception and moved to 2 groomsmen with their own money adjacent to Dorian's restructuring plan. He leaned over table 4, said quietly, "Prepare for tonight to get complicated." One of them asked how complicated. Oliver looked across the room at me. I was showing Sable something on a tablet, a document with dense official-looking text and formal headers. She nodded. I closed it. Didn't look tense. Looked like a man checking a chessboard he already knew he was winning. "Very," Oliver said. Reuben Glaive had been watching me since I walked in. He'd refilled his whiskey 3 times. With each refill, his posture had gotten bigger and his jaw tighter. This was the man who'd shoved me against a wall at a family gathering 2 weeks after my startup collapsed. He'd done it with both hands, hard, and said, "You should save yourself the embarrassment and just stop coming around." I'd never told Serena. I'd filed it behind my eyes and let it become fuel. Now he pushed his chair back, stood up and crossed the reception hall with his chest forward and his eyes fixed on my table. He got within 6 feet. Sable stepped into his path. She didn't touch him, didn't speak. She simply occupied the space between us with the quiet finality of a closed door. Reuben stopped. Not because she was physically imposing, because the way she stood communicated something his body understood before his brain could override it. This boundary will not move, and forcing it will cost you more than you're prepared to spend in this room. He looked at her, then over her shoulder at me. I hadn't looked up. "That boy doesn't belong here," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. I said, without looking up, "Neither does a man who owes someone an apology." The room went fractionally quieter. He wanted to push. Every muscle in him wanted to push. But the room was watching. Reuben Glaive, who had always operated on the assumption that I had no floor, had just discovered it was marble. He turned and walked away. As he passed Serena, she grabbed his arm, said something in his ear. He looked back toward me once, then shook his head. Whatever she'd asked him to do, he'd decided against it. She watched him go. Then she moved toward the side corridor. The corridor was quiet. White-paneled walls, a window overlooking the garden, muffled music from behind the wall. Serena closed the door behind her, still in her wedding dress, still beautiful, but not performing. For the first time all day, not performing. She looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. "I made a mistake," she said. I was standing by the window. I turned and looked at her with the specific calm of someone who has processed something fully and completely, not cold, not detached, just resolved. "I know," I said. She waited for more. I didn't give more. That absence, the refusal to elaborate, to escalate, to perform my hurt for her, threw her off balance in a way no anger could. "Zurich, so did you," I continued. "That's the second part of what I said." She looked at me, not understanding. "You made a mistake today," I said quietly. "Not with me, with him. And I don't think you know the full shape of it yet, but you will." She said, "What do you mean? Do I looked at her, and here is where a lesser version of myself, the one who sat in a dark parking structure 3 years ago, might have laid it all out. Every detail of the Ashford file, the debt structure, the real estate angle, the rejected acquisition, might have needed her to know she chose wrong and I'd known it first. But that wasn't why I came. Do your own due diligence, Serena, I said, before it's done for you. I moved past her, stopped at the door. The margin note in the invitation, by the way. Your mother would have been ashamed of that. I walked back into the reception. Behind me, I heard her pull out her phone. At 7:02 p.m., while dinner was being served and speeches were being organized, a man in a dark suit entered through the side entrance carrying a slim leather portfolio. He wasn't on the guest list. The venue coordinator moved to intercept him. He showed her a business card and said 3 words, "I'm expected, Ashford." He wasn't my attorney. He wasn't connected to me at all. He represented the private equity restructuring firm that had been circling the Ashford portfolio for the better part of a year, the firm whose letterhead Oliver, standing 15 feet away, recognized immediately. Oliver went white. The attorney didn't make a scene. He took a position near the side wall and waited. His presence was like a pressure change, barely perceptible, but felt in the chest of anyone who understood what it meant. Dorian saw him from the head table. His fork went very still. His hand found Serena's under the tablecloth and gripped it. Serena, who had been sitting through dinner in a private interior storm since our corridor conversation, looked at his hand on hers, then at his face. She read him, in full, in one long look across the candlelit table. She'd always been good at reading people. She'd just been choosing not to read this particular one for 18 months. Dorian did not look like a man on his wedding night. He looked like a man who had been running and had just heard footsteps catch up. She pulled her hand away slowly, picked up her wine glass, took one sip. Then she set it down, stood up, walked directly past the bridesmaids and the mothers and the circling photographers, and grabbed Oliver's arm hard enough that he flinched. "Tell me," she said, "all of it." He looked at the door. He looked at Dorian, watching them. Then he began to talk. Oliver told her everything, not loudly, not dramatically, standing at the edge of the hall while the speeches played and glasses clinked. The Ashford fortune, the debt structure, the leverage on the family trusts, the acquisition attempt on my subsidiary that had been rejected in 2 lines, the prenuptial architecture designed to attach her family's commercial properties as collateral, all of it in low, tight sentences, without editing for her comfort. When he finished, she asked one question. "When did you know?" He said, "Long enough ago that I should have told you sooner." She nodded, walked back through the reception, past bridesmaids, past aunts, past her mother who reached for her arm and missed, and stood beside Dorian at the head table. She leaned down and said something in his ear that the room couldn't hear. What the room could see was his face, and the attorney opening his portfolio, and the temperature of the room dropping all at once. Dorian stood up. He said to the room, "I need a moment." He left through the side door. The attorney followed. The room sat in confused silence. Then the whispers began, the way they always begin when something real has happened and everyone is pretending they don't know what. At my corner table, I hadn't moved, hadn't said a word, hadn't approached anyone or made a single announcement. I'd simply arrived with the truth already in my pocket and let the evening find its own ending. Serena, standing at the empty head table, looked across the room and found me. I was already standing, suit perfect, posture unhurried, one hand adjusting my cuff. I looked at her for one moment, not with triumph, not with warmth, with something that said, "I told you to do your due diligence." I nodded once. I turned toward the exit. The walk out took 45 seconds. I know because I counted, not consciously, but the way you count things when you've waited a long time for a moment and want to hold it clearly in your memory. Sable fell into position at my left. 2 others materialized from the perimeter. The motorcade was already in position outside. The front doors opened, valets, venue staff, guests who had drifted to the entrance in the aftermath of whatever had just happened inside. They all saw me emerge. The convoy lights came on. A door opened. I walked to the vehicle, paused with one hand on the roof, and turned back once. Through the tall glass doors, the reception hall was fully visible. Confused guests, the empty head table, the attorney's portfolio open on a side table, the photographer standing with his camera lowered for the first time all evening. Serena was near the center of the room. She hadn't followed me out. She was standing where I'd last seen her, surrounded by the rubble of a night she had designed specifically to bury me. I looked at that image for one full second. Then I got into the SUV. The door closed. The convoy moved. No announcement, no noise. The same unhurried formation as when we arrived, as if the venue were simply a stop on a route that had many more important destinations ahead. Inside the vehicle, I leaned back and exhaled. Not with relief, not with satisfaction, with something quieter. The specific exhale of a man who carried something heavy for 3 years and has finally set it down. My phone buzzed. My mother. I picked up. Before I could speak, she said, "Are you okay?" I thought about the parking structure, the envelope, Aldrich, 19-hour days, a $50,000 check with yellowing scotch tape, a grandfather who wrote that the Gashawn name was never meant to beg. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good, Ma." She said, "Come home. I made dinner." I said, "I'm on my way." The city moved past the windows. The venue disappeared behind us. The Gashawn name was never meant to beg. It was always meant to move.